this is the agenda. Standards, what is the standard, and how does a typical structure look like? And participants in the standard ecology, and what is FRAND licensing, ACP injunctions, and time for question and answer. Even before I go into the foils, this area is becoming very important throughout the world because of the interface between patents and standards, and also to some extent the antitrust or competition law. So from that perspective, it is becoming an important topic, right? And in India, because of the case that is pending in front of the High Court and also in front of Competition Commission of India between Ericsson and Micromax, some of the questions that we are trying to answer here or trying to ask ourselves has been discussed, or they are in front of the court. That's why this topic is important. Okay. Just to start my discussion, here is an iPhone, and can you imagine, or can you take a guess how many standards would be involved in this? Take a wild guess. There is no penalty. 100? 50? 5,000?
Maybe worldwide you're talking or India?
Standards involved in this device. Somebody was too generous, 5,000, and somebody was too mean with
1,000. 1,000.
Okay, moderate. There are 250 standards involved in this, in this product, right?
I said 50 twice.
50 twice?
That's 250.
How many standard essential patents could be involved in this product? My earlier question was how many standards. My second question is how many standard essential patents would be involved in this?
That could be wrong. 5,000.
That would be around 5,000. Roughly, the number of standard essential patents involved in this product is 2,500. Right? So you can just take a guess of the intensity of the patents that are involved in products and the importance of standards to us, right? If we just think about standards, whenever I wanted to transfer my presentation from my laptop to this laptop, right? This is a laptop of different make, HP, and my laptop is Lenovo, right? And there was a common standard interface between them so that I could easily transfer my data using this device. This is a USB-based device, and USB is standard, right? And irrespective of whatever device we use, we can connect to wireless because of the wireless standard protocols that we have, right? IEEE 801, 802.1, all this suite of standards. Without a standard in place, it would be difficult for devices to interact, right? We will not have a standard device to interact with each other, right? So that's why standards are, I'm putting it at a very high level, in a very simplistic way, why standards would be important. So standards are really important, and if you look at this device, you can appreciate that more. If you look at the structure of standards, right? There are different flavors of standard settings organizations, but for this discussion, I'll put all of them in the standard settings organization title. And if you look at, we have formal and recognized standard settings organizations, which are known as STOs. We have international standard settings organizations and national standard settings organizations as well, and also regional standard settings organizations. If you look at international standards, some of the examples are ITU, ISO, and IEC. And if you look at regional, ETSI and COPAN, and national standards, we have ANSI. In our own country, we have something known as what? ISI has become BIS now, Bureau of Indian Standards. So our national standard settings body is BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. That is for everything other than telecom. For telecom, we still have a separate standard settings body, which is known as TEC. BIS and TEC are government bodies, whereas of late there has been a lot of movement where private standard settings organizations are also coming into play. Last year, we have National Telecom Policy of 2012, which mandated setting up of a standard settings organization, and DOSTI was set up, DOSTI, and since 2012, DOSTI is somewhat operating every now and then. Recently, as I'm talking, there is another very prominent organization which is approved by the government, known as TSDSI, Telecom Standards Development Society.
Microsoft also follows some kind of standards in this.
Yep. There are a lot of organizations which follow standards. So standards have touched almost every organization. And of late, it is becoming more and more important. And we also have something known as consortia. Normally, there are private groups which are private organizations which come together to form a consortia to develop a standard for a particular technology. Yeah.
When you say standard, see, internally the organization can have a various standards, whatever standards they want to have.
Okay.
But then there are norms which the country or a inter-country sort of standard or world standards are there.
Yeah.
So when you say standards, are you referring to the international or the national standards? Are you referring to the internal as well as the
Okay. When we talk about internal standards, for example, if I take an organization, there's nobody from Microsoft, right? I take Microsoft. There are internal protocols, right? They are called as proprietary protocols, but it is not exposed to the external world. It is something which is known inside the organization. I'm not talking about it. On one end, I'm not talking about that. And on the other end, for example, 2G spectrum and 3G, I'm not even talking about that, because these are government dominated and there are a lot of policies on that. FCC, for example, it's a government set standard. I'm not even talking about a government set standard. In between these two, there are standards which are set by a group of companies which come together. For example, for USB, several private companies came together and they said, okay, this will be the standard for interoperability between the systems. Right? For wireless also, several companies came together and they started forming standards for whatever problems.
But that will be only if you are party to that group.
Not necessarily. I'll talk about it in the next part. No.
Is it more from a technology enabling perspective?
Yes.
Right?
Technology standard.
Right? So if someone has to, let's say, manufacture a mobile phone which can is a 3G mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
So for the person to be able to operate that mobile phone, it needs to have those technical features, and those
Exactly.
technical features may be actually protected by certain patents which are declared as standards.
Exactly.
That's the link.
Yeah.
So the standards, the ISI standard is not the right connotation to understand things here. The right connotation here is the technical enablement of the features, right? So that's what is called a standard in telecom.
It's not owned by one party. Companies
Yeah.
come together and really build it.
Yes.
Thanks for helping out.
Yeah.
I was trying to paint the canvas wherein I talked about formal standards organizations which are kind of mandated by the government participation. If we take ITU, countries themselves are members to ITU.
But BIS also have member countries, member companies who come together and decide the standard.
Yes, right. That's right.
And external to BIS, you have another group which decides.
I mean, BIS is only
Let's
against
put the technical part, like a 3G standard, a Wi-Fi standard, or a USB standard, so that anything that you're manufacturing in an electronic device that is capable of being called a USB drive needs to have a technology embedded which enables it to work as a USB drive.
Okay.
So those technology features will be protected in patents, which would be standard declared patents. So that's how things are linked in telecom or
Does it mean that product meeting that standard will definitely be infringing the patent?
Yes. Yes, and that's where the consortia, they come together to protect and to enforce licensing fee.
Recent case Biringo versus
Sir, for example,
or something like that.
Yeah, sir, for example, Microsoft follows certain standards. It wants its group or whatever the distributors or XYZ to follow the same standard. So it's established the same standard for them. Yes, my people are following. That's what they wanted then.
Yeah. Like CDMA 2000 technology.
CDMA 2000
and
is
recent
a-
case, I
yes.
think, which is going on in Delhi High Court.
Yeah.
CDMA 2000 technology, some products are being imported from China and the case is going on, all the products complying with that, meeting that standard, is infringing those Nokia patents.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Exactly.
CDMA is a standard.
CDM 2000 technology.
CDMA is a standard. 3G is a standard. So
Yeah,
it's set up by
yeah.
3G people.
Yeah.
And LTE or 4G is a standard that is set up by a standard settings organization.
Yeah,
So,
Dr. Cycle, I think you will cover the front and brand on that.
Yeah.
Thing will be more
Okay. So when it comes to this discussion, the framework for this discussion is, I'm not even talking about this, though whatever I'm talking could be relevant here. I'm not talking about this government standard settings organization or government driven standard settings organization or formal international standard settings organization. My discussion today will be focused more on consortia where several companies come together and accept a particular technology as a standard. This is for interoperability, to develop a good standard, and for wide market adoptability. Okay? Within this framework, I'm talking about FRAND licensing, and some of the issues that I talk about licensing are relevant, are more relevant in that scenario. That doesn't mean that they are relevant here. They could be relevant here also, and for most part, they are relevant here also. Okay. Why should we have standard settings organization? What is the key role of a standard settings organization? Standard settings organization promotes innovation because if there is interoperability between devices, people need not have to worry about the interoperability part. They can build on. So the innovation is at a faster pace. So it promotes innovation, allowing interoperability between products. For example, if my HP made laptop cannot interact with a Lenovo made laptop, then life would be so very different, right? If that's why allowing these devices to talk and a standard protocol for them to talk is very important. So allowing interoperability between products is very important, and that is achieved by SSOs, Standard Settings Organization. Enhancing utility of products. Once again, if I have a single product, because of the USB standard, I can connect so many devices to my laptop, right? I can connect my phone, I can connect my camera, I can connect my hard disk, external hard disk. There are so many things that I connect because of a common connectable device or connectable standard that I have, right? And it also improves cost efficiency. Because of the widespread market, the cost of the product can come down and consumers could be actually eventually benefit. Okay, those are some of the advantages of the standard settings organization. Who are the participants in the standard settings organization? This is not a complete list, but for my discussion, what is important, those participants are highlighted. Okay, so SSOs primarily include technology contributors who are patent holders, and there could also be technology implementers, right? So these people come together and form a consortia or form a standard settings organization. What are the interests of these parties, right? Technology contributors would like to develop a good standard by choosing from alternative solutions. Standard settings are forming a standard is always selecting from few alternatives, right? There could be 10 alternatives to 10 alternatives which could meet which could be a solution to the same problem. But we select one of them as a standard. We pick one of, and once it is picked and locked in as a standard, the other 9 alternatives will die a silent death on their own. That's a very important thing that we need to remember when it comes to standard settings organization. So once I select one of the technology as a winner among 10 technologies that are available, then if I have a patent, if I am a technology contributor and if I have a patent on this technology, I would definitely want my patented technology to be included in the standard, because once the standard is adopted, there would be wide adoptability in the marketplace. So if there is wide adoptability in the marketplace, people who implement products based on this standard should come to me for license, right? So that is a huge revenue stream for me. So I would like to include my technology in this standard. And of course, as I mentioned, get royalty by licensing their patents included in this standard. Okay. These are the interests of a technology contributor. On the other side, what would be the interest of a technology implementer? Technology implementer would want to build products based on the standard, right? based on standard essential patents while minimizing the royalties paid out to the technology contributor. Okay? Those are the interests. In between, there is something known as standard settings organization, which would put some rules so that these two, there is already a conflicting interest between technology contributors and technology implementers. I hope you realize that, right? So to bring about a balanced approach between the interests of these two parties, what we have is the standard settings organization would say, okay, if you are a technology contributor, if you want your technology, patented technology or standard essential patents to be included into your standard, sign this, that you will follow this principle, right? We have several principles, or probably a couple of principles that SSOs adopt, but I chose FRAND because at least 60 to 70% of the SSOs in this world follow FRAND principle. So the interest of SSOs is to have SCP holders to agree to FRAND. What is FRAND? FRAND is fair, reasonable, and non-discriminating. Okay? Licensing terms in exchange to an access to a bigger market. Okay? So what is fairness? According to my understanding, I have defined fairness. It is not written in stone. It's only based on my understanding. Fairness is license should be available to all seekers without any restrictions. So if there is a technology implementer, if he walks through my door, then I should be in a position to license it to him. That is fairness. It could be 50 people or 50 organizations which could ask me for a license. I should not be saying, okay, I'll grant you a license and I'll not grant you a license. I should not be doing that. That is fairness. I grant license to everybody. And reasonable is my patent, my standard essential patent is already included in the standard, right? My patent already has an intrinsic value. If it were not to be included in the standard, it still had a value, right? So royalties should be calculated based on the intrinsic value of the patent and not because it is included into the standard, right? That is reasonable. There are several, at least few case laws which have come up in the US especially, which talks about reasonableness. Non-discriminatory, treat similarly placed potential licenses the same. For example, 5 people walk in and ask me for a license, right? I should not be saying, okay, A, you pay me a royalty of 1%, B, you pay me a royalty of 1.5%, C, you pay me a royalty of 2%, and D, you pay me a royalty of 0.5%. If I do that, even before the products enter the marketplace and before the consumers choose who the winner is, I am selecting the winner, which is anti-competitive, right? So if A, B, C, and D are planning to manufacture 100 million units, then the royalty rate for A, B, C, and D should be the same. I should not be discriminating on the royalty rate. So those are the 3 things which define a FRAND principle. So what's happening? What are the issues that we have at present? SCP licenses available only to system manufacturers and not component manufacturers. As a SCP holder, let's say I have a patent on 3G or LTE, 4G, right? What I would say is this particular standard essential patent is applicable only to a wireless component within my smartphone, right? Instead of charging royalty on the component, which includes the patented technology, what I would say is I will not grant you a license for a component manufacturer. I would say one who manufactures the final product, like the cell phone, a smartphone, I would say I would want to charge royalty in the smartphone rather than charging royalty in the component itself. You can already see the increase in the royalty income that you get. If I charge it on a component could cost 10% of the smartphone. For example, let's say this component, which is a wireless chip, could be 10 rupees, whereas the smartphone could cost you 100 rupees. Instead of charging royalty of 2% on this wireless component chip, if I charge 2% royalty on the smartphone, here it is 2 rupees, here it is 20 rupees, right? So licenses on standard essential patent should be available to the smallest saleable unit and not the final product. Right? Today, SEP holders are abusing their patent position by saying, I will not grant a license to the component manufacturer, but I will grant a license to the system manufacturer. Right? Because the quantum of royalty that I get as a SEP holder if I grant a license to a system manufacturer, sorry, is at least 10 times more, right? So that's one of the problems. To have a very balanced standard system, we should have licenses available to component manufacturers as well. Second thing is SCP licenses available only if implementer agrees to get license for non-SCPs. Okay? I have 100 patents, for example, out of which 10 patents are included in the standards. 10 patents are standard essential patents. So if you come to me for license, what I would say is, along with this 10, take license for this 90 also, another 40 also. Pay me royalty for all the 50. Then only I grant you license for standard essential patents. So you are packaging or you are, there is a particular word in competition law. Tying. Okay. So you are tying non-essential patents with essential patents, which is anti-competitive. Right? So the recommendation is anti-competitive, it leads to anti-competitive practice and results in increased royalty and thus increased prices for the consumer. So the takeaway from this file is selective and strategic refusals and conditional licensing harms innovation, competition, and consumers. It is breach of right.
Even in the final product also, it will get into the competition issue. If we increase the royalty,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That comes under reasonableness. In the Motorola, Microsoft versus Motorola case, they said 2.25% of the Xbox. Right? Royalty should be 2.25% of the Xbox. Then in the courts, it was decided that 2.25% was at least 100 times more than the actual royalty. Right? So that's a typical case.
Okay, I have one question.
Yes.
See, this, when you are talking to me, it appears this is a global kind of understanding, okay? But your patents might not have been filed in all the sort of countries of this world. But the standard for that country also is important. Now, you don't have a patent, so I have the freedom to use, but should I take license from you?
Not necessarily. For example, it's a very good question. I don't have patents in India, and if you want to implement a standard technology, right, you may not have to take a patent from me. I mean, you may not have to take a license from me. But look at the beauty of this. I was talking to a very senior official in TEC, Telecom Engineering Center, and asking him, sir, do we set any standards for India at all in the telecom space? He said, absolutely no, we follow the standards set by IT. So if my patent is already encumbered in a standard set by ITU, wherever I have patents, there I can go and enforce. It happened the same in Ericsson versus Micromax, which was filed in March 2013. Ericsson claims to have 8 standard essential patents that is infringed by Micromax. They ask for injunctions and they ask for damage of 100 crores. So that case is pending in front of the court, Delhi High Court. And recently, 2 months back, 1.5 months back, Micromax went to CCI, Competition Commission of India, and said Ericsson is following anti-competitive practices. So they have brought a case. So CCI is investigating Ericsson. They have accepted the case, and CCI is investigating Ericsson. So what I mean by that is, Ericsson, before filing a case against Micromax, it quoted 8 patents, 8 Indian patents. Right? So how much time do you have? 2 more minutes? Okay.
Including questions.
Including questions? Okay. I'm almost done. No. I did talk
We can
about
ask questions maybe.